Hello and welcome to Release Day, the podcast series that dives into the stories and strategies of how Canada's music community are releasing their art to the world. I'm your host, Alex Heward. Today, we're joined by Juno Award-winning singer-songwriter Justin Rutledge. And on March 26, 2021, Justin released his 9th studio album, Islands, via Outside Music. It's a retrospective album where Rutledge not only revisits songs, but moreover the process that brought them to life. We talk about his evolution as a songwriter, why playing live as often as you possibly can is important to your growth as a musician, and what it's like to be backed up on vocals by none other than Blue Rodeo's Jim Cuddy. But first, we acknowledge the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Land acknowledgements mark a small and important step in the process of reconciliation and building a positive relationship with our country's Indigenous peoples. A stalwart of the Toronto music scene for nearly 20 years, Justin has released 9 albums and has toured extensively throughout North America and Europe. His 9th album, Islands, provided Rutledge the opportunity to re-record the songs in the way they were conceived, alone with minimal accompaniment, as if you're sitting in the kitchen with him as the songs are composed. Our conversation begins as Justin takes us through where it all began for him as a musician.
I started writing songs in high school. I was in various bands, never really took it seriously. It wasn't until I was at university where I did 3 years at U of T, and then I really wanted to, see where music could take me. So I didn't really, like I said, I didn't take it seriously. So I took a year off and I wanted to record an album that I was happy with, which I did. And after that, I told myself I'd go back to school, and that never happened. So I recorded my first album, No Never Alone, and I pressed it in 2003 independently. And through a series of strange events, it ended up being released in England in 2004. I got some decent reviews over there. So and then subsequently, Six Shooter Records released it in 2004 or 2005. I think 2005. So it was something. It was a dream I had, but a dream that I was okay to not see come to fruition, because I did the best I could. I said, just do the best you can, and we'll see what happens. Because in my mind, I wasn't a great songwriter. In my mind, I wasn't. I really loved what I was doing, and I thought the songs that I recorded were great, and they represented me well. And to me, that was an achievement on its own. But I did work hard at it, and I did bug the right people at the right time. And, it was just a lot of perseverance at that stage in my life.
How did you find that you became a better songwriter? You didn't think you were good. What was it? Do you just keep working on it? Was there some, pats on the back, something from somebody that really gave you the encouragement?
Well, it's interesting. I didn't think I was a great songwriter at the time. I still don't. I still think I have a lot of work to do. It's still actually songwriting is getting harder for me. It's not getting easier. But back then, I took some risks with my writing, especially lyrically, for my first album, and I got support from some pretty fantastic people back then, and that meant a lot to me. And that sort of secured. What that said to me was, okay, what I'm doing, the risks I'm taking are okay, and they're good, and people are responding to it. So I just continued to take risks, and I still do. I mean, they're very small risks. I don't do experimental music, but within my genre, within my field of quote unquote the singer-songwriter category, I try to push boundaries here and there. And yeah, I started doing that, and I'm still doing it.
It's a real East Coast sound to you. Sorry, are you from the East Coast? Or are you from what part of Canada?
I'm from Toronto.
Yeah. No, it's a great, just the way that you can channel that sound and that feeling, having been, to Nova Scotia and Newfoundland a few times myself, that it really feels that element in your music.
Yeah, it's weird. So, a lot of people, well, it's actually one person in particular said, you sound like you're from everywhere other than Toronto.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So the new album is Islands, and it is a retrospective album. You could almost call it like a greatest hits, but I don't think you're there yet. Not quite at a greatest
well, I
hits
don't have
state.
any hits, but it is like a greatest hits without the hits.
Well, I would beg to differ, man. Saint Peter to me is an incredible song. I'd say that's definitely up there as a greatest hit. But you've got some other songs in here as well that you've sort of redone or added in, which is like Federal Mail, which was a really awesome approach to just putting an instrumental version of the song together, and then Jelly Bean, which is you called like the crowd favorite from the live shows, and you've also added in Nautical Disaster, a cover of the Tragically Hip song. How did you determine these were the songs?
I had a long list of about 25 to 30 songs, because I look back at my catalog and probably 80, it's 80 plus songs to choose from. So yeah, I had about 20 to 25 to 30 songs. And there were some songs that I recorded that in the studio that just didn't work, that I thought were going to work, they were sort of surefires. It was actually, when I got into the studio to record it, it's actually a lot more difficult. I was thinking to myself, okay, I'll record an acoustic record of some of my tunes. That sounds very simple. When it's just you and a guitar and you put a couple of mics in front of you, and it's just you and a guitar, and you got to play it, and it's going to tape, and you're going to tape, because it's just one take, right? You're keeping your vocal, you're keeping your guitar.
That's how the whole thing was recorded. You just did one take of each song?
Well, I mean, I did, 3 or 4 takes of each tune, and then we just picked the best one, right? But you're not editing in between takes. You're not going in and tuning the vocals, or you're not going in and comping a vocal or comping a guitar. It's just, that's the take from start to finish. So that fills you with a certain amount of permanence in the studio. And I didn't realize how much that would affect me. So it was actually quite difficult to record these tunes specifically. But there were some songs that surprised me. Islands was on the long list of songs to put on there. No, Too Sober to Sleep was on the long list. That didn't make it. That's arguably one of my better known songs. It's surprising what sticks and what doesn't. But yeah, these, it's not even a 10-song album. It's a 9-song album. I just feel I have long songs as well, so I don't want to put too much out there.
Mm-hmm.
It's still, with 9 songs, I think it's still like a 51-minute record or something,
Yeah. And was this decision made just by you? Did you work with your management or the label to bring them down?
It was actually my manager's decision, not the song choices necessarily, but the idea behind the record, because it is my 9th record. It's time to sort of take a bit of a breath and look back at the last 18 years. I guess when I released No Never Alone personally, that was 18 years ago when I pressed it independently in 2003.
Is it helpful to have someone like that, a manager, someone to work with to cut those down? Could you find yourself maybe spinning around in circles? No,
I didn't consult with him on the track choices.
Right. Okay.
I think I might have sent him like my final list.
Right.
I try to make a lot of the creative decisions on my own. That being said, I do reach out to Evan, my manager, a lot when I'm stumped, and I don't try to make these decisions on my own out of spite or anything. I get to a point where I can do it, and then if I reach a stage where I need a little clarification or a little help, I'll reach out to him.
No, that's important, right? I mean, that's important as the artist, as the person releasing the music, that's what matters to you. And I had mentioned you put a cover of Nautical Disaster as well on there. And, you're no stranger to covering Tragically Hip songs. You have a whole album, Daredevil, dedicated to some really great, well reformed Tragically Hip songs. How, as a songwriter, beneficial is it to dive into the work of somebody like Gord Downie as a writer, and then the rest of the band as musicians, to, I guess, study the song? What does that do to you as a songwriter? Does it help you? Do you grow when covering songs like those?
Absolutely. That's why Nautical Disaster is on here, because it's sort of an appendage to the Daredevil album, or a nod to, if I'm looking back on my career, Daredevil was an important album for me. So and looking back, again, that was an album that I thought would be easier than it was, because it's really hard to cover the Tragically Hip. It's one of those cases where like only they can really do what they do. You know, a song like Grace 2, for example, where it's about the energy that the band creates. And I didn't really, when I went to record, especially that song, I mean, wow, how do it's really impossible to recreate, you know, not trying to recreate that, but to put your own spin on it. You know, I think that the versions I did were cool, but I definitely can't sit back and say I did anything better because they are who they are.
I think it's a bit of a battle too, right? As a musician and wanting to, you know, do a cover of some of the songs that you love, but knowing that you got to kind of do it in a way that, you know, do you want people to listen to you over them, or, you know, what, you know, kind of putting your own spin on it enough for people to say, you know, I want to go listen to the Justin Rutledge version over the Tragically Hip version.
It was interesting because my crowd, a lot of my fans are not Tragically Hip fans.
Okay.
You know, and I got that a lot when I was on tour. You know, a lot of people said to me, like, I don't listen to the Tragically Hip, but I really love Daredevil. And it turned me on to, or it made it more
perfect.
Right. And so that was what I was trying to do with the record. And I wasn't trying to introduce them to new fans necessarily, but I was trying to put their songs in a context that maybe my fans, it would apply to them, you know.
Perfect, man. That's awesome. I mean, and then it got the attention of, was it Rob Baker or Rob? And he came and played on Passages, right? And
through that, Rob and I made a connection, and then we became friends and started working together. So yeah,
that's cool.
Very cool. Yeah,
that's awesome. And lastly, just to touch on Jelly Bean, you know, you're quoted, and just in the press release that came out, that it's a song you've always been cautious about recording because it's such a live song. You've tried it a few times in the past, but it never made the cut. You finally captured the essence of the song with this recording. How did you capture that essence? Everybody wants to know.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that I was overthinking it. When I tried to record it in the past, I just kept overthinking it, you know.
Yeah.
I would add a band, or I would have a drummer, and I would add this, I would that, you know. It's just like, you can't, that song is just guitars and people singing in a room. That's all. And anything other than that is going to sound, it's just going to sound wrong. So when I say the essence of the song, the real essence of the song is live at the end of a show with the whole room around you singing it. This is the closest I can do for a recording.
Yeah, it felt great, man. I love listening to it just because it, obviously in the state of the world we're in, we can't go see live music. So it's a great song to put on to just immerse yourself, feel like you are there.
Yeah, thank you. I got that a lot from when I released it as a single for this record. A lot of people were saying, you know, it really hit home for them because, you know, they're dying to see live music, or they're dying to be, you know, in an audience with other music fans watching their favorite band, you know.
Yeah.
We'll get back there one day.
Totally. That was a strong lead single from the from this album.
Yeah, I liked leading with it because you can't really hear my voice in it, right? It's just
okay.
Yeah.
What was can you recall, do you have like a favorite time you played that song, when like there was a time like when you played it live that like you think back to was most memorable?
Yeah, it's, you know, I think back to those early days at the Cameron House when I was still figuring it out, you know, and I'd stand on the bar 1:30 a.m. on a Monday night.
Yeah.
You get the real people out at 1:30 in the morning on a Monday.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think back to those days with such fondness. And, you know, and when I'm sure, you know, we all experienced this, but like those were some special times when I was still trying to figure it out. There's something special for, you know, with regards to like younger artists. There's really something special about the early days, and just the sort of, you don't kind of know what's going on or how to do it, but you've got this sort of the cojones, you know, and feel like you can reach out to anyone, or because you feel like you got something to say.
Probably nothing to lose at that point either, right?
Yeah, exactly. Nothing to lose. I mean, just go for it, you know.
So let's get to a little bit of the releasing of the album. So again, the album came out on March 26th, and you released this through Outside Music, which is a label management and distributor. What's it like to work with a label? And did you work with them in a management or a label capacity, and or I guess a label as well as what it came out as? But how much work with them? Yeah.
I worked with, so I've known Evan Newman, one of the owners of Outside, for going on 20 years. He was one of the early supporters of my first record. So him and I have been, back then he was working for B2 Records, and I had my first 4 records released on Six Shooter Records, another great label in Toronto. And we parted ways in, I think, 2011 or so. And then, Evan reached out, and I didn't know what I was doing at the time. I didn't even know if I was going to make another record, but Evan reached out and said, if you ever want to release another record, I'd gladly do it for you. So that's how the conversation began. And yeah, they managed me as well. Six Shooter managed me when I worked with them. A lot of labels are doing that sort of 360 deal because, money's hard to come by in our field. So they're sort of gaining a little more income by having a label and a management under the same roof, going into the same bank account. It's a smart business decision. And yeah, working with Outside's been great. They're, I think Canada's oldest independent distributor as well. Yeah. Very respected. Lloyd and Kathy, who own it, are wonderful people. They're a solid group of people there. Yeah.
Yeah. So for indie artists that are listening to us that are maybe trying to do things on their own or maybe thinking about going to a label, is there anything you can maybe say that is beneficial from jumping in with a label that they can help you with that takes some things off of your plate trying to release things independently?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to do. If you're doing it on your own, there's a lot to do, and that can lead to serious burnout. I think most artist deals are, especially with independent labels, are very fair these days. You have a sort of a machine working behind you that allows you to create, that allows you to sort of do your job better, essentially. Yeah. They help with recording budgets and fees, and in return, they get ownership of the masters or a portion of the masters, depending on the kind of deal you work out. And so that's how they might make a little money on the back end. They help with manufacturing, production. In the case of Outside Music, they also distribute. So it's, I've found there are a lot of benefits to working with a label. I've never not worked with a label except when I pressed my record independently in 2003. But that being said, it's if you don't have any luck searching out a label these days, it really doesn't matter. Does it matter that much? I mean, there are so many avenues for you to get your music out there. That being said, because there's so much music out there, label heads are getting inundated with, or must be getting inundated with so many songs from so many artists. There are only so many times they can go on YouTube and look for the next big star, I guess.
Right.
I don't really know how they manage that these days, but it's interesting. It's hard. I don't think there's an easy way to get your music heard. I think playing live is sort of let's just pretend we're not in COVID. I think you have to play live. I think the only way I got people out to my shows was because I got a residency.
Nice.
It's unfortunate, and it's unfortunate because I would play every open mic in Toronto just to A, be heard, but B, to meet people and to meet other songwriters. There are songwriters I know that made a record and they've never played a show. And that's, you really, I know you might be afraid, but you got to play a show. You have to book a show. Yeah. Because the first thing you could make the best record around, and the first thing that someone from a label is going to say is, well, cool, when can I see you live? And if you've never spoken to a musician before, if you don't have a band, if you don't know who to call, if you don't know how to plug in your guitar, that's a big problem, right? So, and there are so many, on top of that, there are just so many other facets that you sort of have to pay attention to. But I think you have to just play live as much as possible.
And how did the pandemic of 2020 play into, did you have to really redirect how you were planning on releasing this?
I just put it off.
Yeah.
The good thing about it, if it were an album of new original material, personally, I wouldn't have released it. I don't want to release a record that I can't really promote. With Islands, because it was a retrospective album, and because it was it's not, and it is an album. It's an album of older original material, more of a, it's, you know, it's me covering myself essentially. And so there wasn't this, you know, you got to hear these new songs of mine. So, but if it was an album of original material, I definitely would not have released it. Yeah.
So when it came to, you know, sitting down with Evan, or, you know, to talk about, you know, planning this out and thinking about how you were going to release the first song, you know, are those, you know, those kinds of meetings, you know, you're reaching out to him and saying, hey, you know, like, let's talk about this. Is he coming to you and thinking, you know, hey, you know, what song do you want to put out first? How is the structure or the thinking when it comes to picking your release, your single releases?
He usually reaches out to me because he knows when things need to be delivered, and he knows when certain decisions have to be made. And that's the other great thing about having a label management, because they know when they are releasing the record, you know, you know what they need. So he'll get in touch, and we were pretty much on the same page.
Yeah, that's great. I love the artwork of the single and the album cover. That is super cool. Just it's so minimal, but it's like, it is what it is, man. It's very cool. Where did the ideas for that come from? How did you get to that state?
Well, I worked with a graphic designer named Meredith Lazowski, and I had an idea, super minimal, because it is a minimal record, right? And I've been listening to a lot of sort of electronic albums, and all their stuff is super minimal, which I thought was pretty cool. Like all of Nils Fromm's records, they're just like one color with a square.
Yeah.
And you know, that style doesn't really suit what I do. But again, like I was saying earlier, like, I'm a singer-songwriter, but I'm not going to put a picture of me in a field with a guitar on the cover of my record. I just don't like that at all. I hate even putting pictures of myself on the album cover, and that's just who I am. So I did sort of a napkin sketch. You know, I said, what if we do a little mountain in the middle with like 2 lines, and then my name underneath, and then title of the record. I said, great. And with every single, we can just swap an image of like a jelly bean or
bowler hat, I think.
Bowler hat.
Yeah.
Steer a ship's wheel, or you know, so and add different colors. So, and she's an amazing graphic designer.
That's great. And now you've got a vinyl for it coming out. Are you part of that process and understanding when you needed to get everything ready and over to printing and pressing for that?
Yeah, I've got deadlines for that. So I'm pretty bad with deadlines. They're good to have, but I must admit, I get stuff in, but just like at the 11th hour. So, but yeah, deadlines are very important.
Yeah. And that's just like a calendar that Evan shares with you, and you guys just kind of work from the same thing.
Yeah, he just gives me dates, and I need this by this date. And I think he has a bit of a buffer. Like, he probably needs it mid-April, but he'll ask it from me for, you know, early April, because he knows I'll be late.
Yeah, perfect. Understanding how your artist works. Totally.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool, man. Well, I just want to close by talking about something else that I had seen when going through some videos of yours and checking out some things from the past, and, you know, came across the Blue Rodeo celebration of their 25 years in the music and making music. How did you get involved with it? Were you able to be part of a night like that with a band like Blue Rodeo? It's amazing.
They asked me, I guess. That's the short answer. But cool. Basil Donovan from Blue Rodeo was one of the early supporters of my stuff, like early, before it was released in Canada, kind of early. And I opened for Jim on his cross-country tour in 2006. I think it's for his solo tour. So, you know, just over the years, I kind of know the guys. Great guys. You know, Glenn's awesome. Mike Wagusky, I went to high school with him. And
that's great. Have you recorded anything at the Woodshed before?
I did my second, third, fourth, fifth albums at the Woodshed. So I've worked there quite a bit. Yeah,
that's cool. I've been in there once. I joined the Music Managers Forum a couple of years back, and they had one of their AGMs there. So I was able to step in, and it was short, but it was cool, you know, just to see the environment.
Yeah, for sure. Great space. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, man. I was just thinking about it because I'm watching it, and, you know, I'm sure it means, I'm not sure what it means to you, but, you know, just to be singing, you covered Falling Down Blue with them, and just to hear Jim Cuddy backing you up on vocals, I mean, that must be pretty awesome.
Yeah, he's a legend, and he's a classy guy, and I consider him a friend, and he's they're one of those bands that really, I probably wouldn't be where I am without their support. They have always supported young up and coming acts, like, when I was coming up, and my friend Doug Paisley and the Sadies, and they're always just they're really, really good people, and using, like, they really understand that they have as a role, as we really look up to them as young songwriters, and they're using their power well. They get big crowds, and they want to have opening acts that they want their crowds to see, because it's just they're like I said, they're using their power well.